We're going to talk all sorts of things through this podcast. Actually, maybe we should start with a bit of, like, we want to talk, I mean, I've loved this phrase lately. Some people think it's crass, but like body count.
Not to be crass or anything, but like you had multiple partners.
And I never felt like I was trapped in my past with you. Like right. You were fantastic. You've always been big enough to handle my worst day. Intimacy needs commitment.
Yeah.
And commitment that is, are you willing to put it on paper?
There's just the whole good Christian girl thing, you know, how far can I go without feeling like I've gone too far?
After sex, I didn't feel empty.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like, who is this person? I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel distaste. I told all my friends, they're like, man. Welcome to everybody that is viewing, wherever you're viewing from. I was gonna say at home, but I don't know.
It could be anywhere. It could be anywhere.
Could be anywhere.
Yes.
And we're talking relationships.
Yep.
We're in a relationship series.
Yes.
And Audrey kind of was like, let's talk about it in front of the people, which we'll see. We'll see where it goes. So welcome. Hope this speaks to people. We've been together for how long? 22 years?
Just about. Yep. Married going on 18 years in a couple weeks. So lots of life.
Yep.
We met each other when we were 21. Well, I was 21. You were 20.
I was only 20. I was just young and impressionable and just trying to figure it out, you know, and here comes this woman of 21.
Right.
And that's how we're here.
We're here. 4 kids, a church,
Yep.
12 years in Chicago. And we're sitting in our living room talking about relationships.
We are.
Yes.
What's going to come of this?
Yeah.
What are we going to talk about?
Well, what
do the people want to know?
What do the people want to know?
What do you want to know? What do we talk about? What's in your mind?
Yeah, I think relationships, as you mentioned on Sunday, it's one of 2 things that usually takes people down, right? And like we say, life moves at the speed of relationships, and who you decide to partner with for the rest of your life, hopefully, it matters. And that decision is a big decision. So I guess my heart is to kind of help people on their journey of discovery of what relationships should look like or what they should expect. Which
is interesting because we live in a time where it's like there is no such thing as what something should look like.
Right.
So I think it's going to be good. I hope we hit something that is honest, and maybe the goal, I think, is, I don't know if it's our goal, but we've always been very comfortable with being vulnerable and just talking about, you know, whatever and however. So I hope it's good. But
so on Sunday, I think you spoke a phenomenal message. You opened up the series.
Thank you.
And your main point, which was the foundational for relationships. And I'm probably not going to get it 100% right, but the sentiment was, if you're not in a relationship with God, then you are already in a relational deficit. Do you want to like expand on that a little bit?
We're going straight in.
Yeah, here we go.
The team was like, you guys can banter, and we're just like, we don't have any banter right now. What we have is
we can banter a little bit as we go.
Yeah, I think it's just the reality, and I think it's I think something that everyone has to acknowledge. I think we live in a world that maybe doesn't acknowledge, no, not maybe, we live in a world that doesn't completely acknowledge God, but at the same time lives with the realities of God's absence. And fine, you know, you grow up a certain way, maybe you think you got ideas of church, religion, and all the rest of it. But the truth is, just obviously we're coming at this from a Christian perspective. It is ours. I wasn't always saved.
Yep.
You were. I want to get into at some point, like your story, like singing, uber Christian girl in a Christian singing group. Well, I'm not being a Christian while you're doing that stuff. And how you even chose me, how we ended up, all that kind of stuff. But all that being said, obviously this is from a Christian worldview, and the truth is that you're at a deficit because you were created to be in a relationship with God. And I think any moment that you're at a deficit, that's already a bad place to be because you're coming empty. But what's worse, if you're at a deficit with like specificity that it can only be filled by God, that's huge. And if you're new to this and you're hearing this and you're maybe just new to faith or considering it, I would say that, you know, most people would agree that there is something great out there. There's something bigger. They might not know how to name it. I think one of the most Googled questions was not, is there a God, but who is God? So I think most people are comfortable with that, right? I think that emptiness, that constant search, that hitting the peak of a mountain and feeling like you didn't do anything, and the disappointment that sometimes arrives at the end of great heights is the deficit I'm talking about. And I think we either learn to cope with it, or we try to fill it. And usually, and even in the Bible, Adam and Eve, the minute God came back in the garden, they hid with each other and found each other. And I think we hope to find solace, purpose, joy, get rid of that, loneliness feeling through others and through people. And the problem is it just puts a weight and strain that cannot be met, because it is God. Without God, you're just at a deficit, and now you're just pulling too much.
For sure.
And I think that just puts too much weight on something that can't carry it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of relationships are in trouble because of that.
Definitely. I go back to our own story when we were, early 20s, kind of exploring this relationship, right in the middle of Bible college, big dreams in our hearts. And I think we centered our relationship around our relationship with God and purpose.
We did.
And I think our relationship was birthed from that place. And I thank God that it started there, because throughout the 17 years we've been married, I think it's our relationship with God and our purpose on earth has kept us together, because we've lived some pretty turbulent through some turbulent times and some dark seasons. And I think it's important. I couldn't imagine still possibly being married without God as our foundation.
Yeah, I think one of the hard things, is, okay, they say opposites attract. That is true.
Yes.
The
and
problem,
we
100% opposite.
100% are like the extreme opposites.
Yeah, I'm caring and thoughtful, just really sensitive.
You
really.
Are a great man. And
I'm a good man.
You're a good man.
I'm a good man. I might not be nice, but yeah, I think there's exactly where. So I was going to say, one of the things I wanted to dive into through this is how do you be opposite well?
Yeah.
How do you be completely opposite? Because I think some people would call opposite, we don't match. Like, oh, we're just not compatible, wrong one.
Well, our opposites have been our strength as well.
But this is a car analogy, but I was saying, like, the front of a Ferrari and the back of Ferrari, beautiful. They're different. They come together and make the Ferrari.
Oh, okay.
And
I like that.
I think that instead of thinking that opposite is incompatibility, it's maybe completeness. But how do you do that? How do you get to that?
Yes.
And then the other thought, I was like, we came from very different places. Like, I was not really devoted to God until I was like 19 or 20. You were always devoted to God. What did your life, you say stuff like, I didn't know this exists, but like apparently for anyone in the church world, and you're a pastor's kid, guys would come up to you and be like, I heard, God, that you're going to be my wife.
Yeah.
And you were wrong.
Multiple times.
Multiple times.
Yes.
So that's just crazy. I didn't know that was a thing. And for me, I just was getting it wrong and just giving it my all to get it wrong. And I think I found you at a place where I was like, okay, I know what doesn't work. Yeah. Like, I know what doesn't complete me. I know what it feels like to wake up and feel really empty when something in us says that, like, sex is supposed to make you feel full, maybe whole, good. Yeah. And it's like, how do you share something so intimate and then feel so distant from someone at the same time? And I think we're going to dive into that and why. We're going to talk all sorts of things through this podcast. Actually, maybe we should start with a bit of that. Like, we want to talk, I've loved this phrase lately. Some people think it's crass, but like body count. Yes. I think that's the best way to put it.
Can you maybe expound on the concept of body count?
I think the people know. I think the people know. But
I didn't know. I was like, wait, what does that mean? But it's such a good way.
Just how many people have you slept with? How many of those have you amassed over time? And the truth is, like, is there an effect to that? We pastor a lot of people. Like, and this is the other thing. Like, a lot of this isn't our just sitting here from perfection. Like, when neither of us are perfect.
Yeah.
We have very different journeys that we got to God, got to health, got to each other. The journey with each other was imperfect and all the rest of it, and we'll share on that. Literally anything, if the people want to know, like we're so open to talk about it all, from miscarriages to moving to all the things. But I think that, man, we sit across from people and it is an effect. I think you're fooling yourself if you think that all the people you slept with aren't going to kind of somehow be in that bed, that marriage bed eventually. Yeah. And that's something I think to talk about, not to feel guilty about, but like, how do you then correct it? Like if you are feeling that, what does that look like? And then maybe you can mitigate that and you don't have to keep down that route because where that's going to take you.
I mean, I was pretty honest and blunt, or not honest, but I was very forward in my questions to you about your past. And I remember initially when you and I started considering the idea of dating, you're like, Odds, I don't know that you want to know my past. And
I actually didn't know if you wanted to know me if you knew my past.
If you knew me,
I felt so much like, I
mean, I think I don't know. I was like, well, I'm kind of not interested in your past. I'm more interested in our future, right? But in the same breath, you knew I was the one.
I knew you were the one.
But I think throughout the years, I'm like, okay, so what was like, not to be crass or anything, but like you had multiple partners, you had a bit of a body count, right? Like, what was that like? And, you know, when it comes to intimacy here, and then we're going to go there, like, how does, like, am I enough? You know, because all I've ever known is you, right? Yeah. And so I think
I don't want to make it awkward for the kids watching, but
for the kids, but I was being serious and honest because I didn't have any other experience outside of you being my first and, you know, my only sexual experience, you know.
I wanna even talk about that a bit.
Yeah.
Later.
Because that's even been a very interesting journey.
What was it like? Because what's the boundary as well and what's the line? As a Christian girl, did it ever get?
Yes.
Anyway, like what does that look like? Because I think there's a lot of, one of the questions I got asked.
What's considered sex?
Yeah, I got asked like, well,
where's
when
the
is
line?
it sex? Where's the line? And I think sex is one thing, but sexual encounters is a whole nother.
Yes, absolutely.
And what does that look like? And so, but yeah, you did ask that. And that is, I think, something that,
and
I don't know. I wonder if people, do you think everyone asks that? I mean, I think it's a valid question. I think it's a good question. Sorry.
I don't know that everyone asks that.
Do you think they don't ask it because, like, I feel at the moment that everything in culture is like, everything is disguised in security.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, if you're secure, you don't care. If you're secure, it doesn't matter. And look, to a degree, it doesn't matter. Your answer to me was fantastic. Like, I'm not interested in your past.
Yeah.
And even on the side of like previous sexual partners and stuff, like you never labored on it. I never felt like I was trapped in my past with you. Like you were fantastic. So there is truth to it.
I wanted to know because I think I wanted to know you even in that place as much as possible.
Yeah.
You know, like all of you.
I love that.
And I think, I don't know that there was like insecurities in me, but I just wondered, and I never wanted to have our relationship be like no stone left unturned. Like I want to know everything, you know? And I, just to praise you and commend you, like you were so honest and you were so like open about that with me, you know? And you didn't have to be honest. You could have kept some stuff to yourself, but you were so honest. And I think that.
But you made it, I think, and this is something I feel like there's so many things we could spin off on, but I think you made honesty easy. Because if honesty comes with a cost, now sometimes it does. That's the other thing, right? If you're going to be honest about some things and they are some things that have an effect, that is what it is. But what I mean by a cost, it wasn't like disproportionate. It wasn't difficult to be honest.
Yeah.
You were so graceful, good. You realized obviously, and this is a concept in this, that obviously we weren't together. There was it wasn't like it was infidelity or anything, but it's just, you made it easy, I think, to be honest. And you've always been that. Like I've always said, you're just pretty secure and good and even keel. So yeah, I think you've just been great. You facilitate good places for honesty.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I just wanted all of you. And sometimes that's the parts that you're not proud of and the parts you don't want to talk about. But
you've always been big enough to handle my worst day, which I think I always wanted in a wife.
Yeah.
And that's been...
I have a question. I don't think I've ever asked you this question, and it's...
That's the second time I made that noise. You were like, what's wrong with this man?
So like on the topic of sex and body count and all of that, obviously you experienced sex outside of marriage when you came into the union of marriage with me. And, you know, was there a difference in your experience, like sexually? Like, did it feel different? Did it have a weightiness to it? Or like what was that like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if I'm honest, right, like for me, no, if I'm honest, I hate that phrase. When people say that and you're talking to them and you're like, I thought we were always being honest. I thought that was part of it. Yeah, just be honest. Just speak honestly. I think, so I got saved at 14, like had an encounter with Jesus, right? I kind of had this weird, like when we were young, we went to church for a minute. It was a very Pentecostal Spanish church and we just kind of never went back. So I had a God awareness. And because I had a God awareness, I almost had this conviction of like what is, what isn't right, but I never knew the why behind it, right? So even though I did live that life, I was always very, to an extent, like I'd say trying to live that life with guardrails.
Yeah.
So whilst I did have partners before you, like I think there was that. So, and then also we met at 19. So like, I think this is a whole other thing, but like finding your calling early is such a saving grace because when you've got something of value, you choose to protect it a bit different. And I started to make some decision changes. So all that, I didn't have like this massive reference to go by, but what I did feel the years leading into like really getting serious about God at around like 19. And it was like a fast journey from there. I'd been in church, but not really, you know, you can be a Christian, but you're not. Yeah. You can believe, you can love messages. Yeah. The question I have is like, when are you ready to live them?
Well, you give your heart. Yeah. But you don't give your life every time. Right.
You give your heart, but do you give your life? Right. And that was what shifted at 19. So I feel like all these seeds flourished. And I think I went through this whole process of like shifting my ideology around women and girls and pornography and sex and all those things. And even like flirting. And so by the time I held your hand for the first time, I was genuinely nervous. Yeah. So I feel like there was a lot of like restoration. I also don't feel like I went into that with like sex expectations, you know what I mean, in a sense. Like, I think you've always, to me, been captivating, beautiful and stunning. And I've just always been in love with you like that. So I think that wasn't a thing. I think the difference was the commitment and the safety in commitment, the connection with someone that I actually got to know at a real deep level, mentally, spiritually. Yeah. It was like, this kind of made it better. Yeah. But then, and then it was just like, I don't know, it was a great journey, like just learning together and experiencing things together. But I don't think, I think I just I didn't feel lonely after sex. I didn't feel empty. Yeah. I didn't feel like, who is this person? I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel distaste. I'd talk to all my friends and they'd be like, man, after I've had sex, like I gotta leave. And it was like, I just can't be there. And it was like, wow, sex became something that wanted me to lean in more. I wanted to share and talk about our future afterwards. I wanted to so it was actual intimacy. Yes. And I think intimacy needs commitment. Yeah. And commitment that is, are you willing to put it on paper? Yeah. You know, our paper doesn't mean anything. It does. Yes. It does. That's why your home loan's on paper. You know what I mean? Absolutely. That's why you don't just go to the bank and go, hey, I'm good for it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, they're not like, oh yeah, you're good for it, eh? Okay. Like, it means something. So I think that shifted it. I don't know. I could talk forever, so I don't want to talk too much.
No, it's great.
That's what
I love that. I love that.
What about you? Like, what was dating, boundaries, Christian. Yeah. You definitely never, you know, what was that like for you? I don't want to talk for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just the whole good Christian girl thing, you know, but you're like, how far can I go without feeling like I've gone too far, you know? And I didn't have a lot of like, to be honest, like I was so eager to just meet the one. And there were many prospects, especially the ones that were telling me, hey, God spoke to me and said, you're going to be my wife, which is absolutely crazy. They're crazy.
What did you think when they say that? What's the first thing that pops in your mind?
I was like, yeah, right, bro. Like, he didn't tell me, you know,
trying to get God to co-sign on the move. That's like crazy.
That's weird. So if you do that, just don't do that anymore, because it's kind of weird.
It is.
But I mean, if you do feel compelled to that, or you feel like, what's the word? Like there's somebody that is a strong prospect for you.
Okay.
Maybe don't tell her that God spoke to you. Maybe just pray about it and let it happen naturally. And really trust God with that word. Because if he spoke it, then it's going to happen, right? So yeah, I think I was just so scared, Chris, to like get involved with a guy that was going to steer me in the wrong direction, because I always felt like God, like I was preserved for this life that I'm living today. And I was afraid that if I were to engage or to hook up or to become a girlfriend and boyfriend and potentially a fiance to somebody, I knew what I wanted. And it wasn't about like the aesthetic. I wanted a leader. I wanted a strong man. I wanted a man that loved God. I wanted a man that I would be attracted to in that way. And, you know, obviously I love you and I'm attracted to you. But for me, I wrote out as a 17-year-old, I literally wrote out like a list of things that I wanted in a man. And the only thing that you didn't meet on that list was the fact that you were not a virgin when we got married, you know, which I think it was like.
You also had like, I thought you had other like preferences too.
I did. And I think this was.
If we're talking about it.
Well, let's talk about it. So I think there was a part of me that I was so disheartened and I was so brokenhearted because a dream of mine had been shattered, that the possibility or the dream of ministry, I just couldn't face it. And so my desires started to change. Like maybe if I married outside of like my race, and maybe if I married somebody that's a Christian but not in ministry, and maybe if it's, you know, person that's more business minded. I'm like,
a lot of people don't know that you're Puerto Rican for some reason.
Really?
I feel like I knew it the minute I saw you.
Mira, okay, I am Boricua. I am Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think because I had experienced that, like my desires and ultimately what I felt my purpose was in life started to shift a little bit.
Man.
But it scared me because as I started to look into different prospects, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know that I want that. And so I didn't entertain them. I mean, I remember going on a date with a guy who is, and like nothing ministry related, loved Jesus, used to go to church faithfully, but I'm like, I don't know that I can do this, because I just felt like innately it just didn't click for me.
Where did that come from for you? Like, because I think even when I first met you, you always had an awareness of what you're made for. Yeah. I mean, it took you to Australia from Chicago. You really didn't know anything as to where you were heading. Where did that come from? Because I think the reason I ask, right, is it put guardrails for you.
It did.
And I think that you are your most valuable, and your calling is your most valuable thing.
Yes.
And if you don't have a handle on that, you're going to like partner with anyone.
Yes.
Because it's a partnership. It's not just they're hot, they're going to stop me from being lonely. Like, it's a partnership, and that means that you're going where they're going.
Right.
How did you grasp that, where I think it doesn't matter that you're in, I don't think it was just church, right? Because heaps of people in church that struggle with that.
Yeah.
It's not just that you got great parents. How did you grasp that?
Man, I think it's going to be the most Christian answer ever. But to be honest, I was living under like just this heavy conviction that almost was like crushing me.
Wow.
There was a conviction that I could not table. I could not push away into the peripherals. And that was just literally, it was overtaking me over and over and over again. And I couldn't deny it any longer. I couldn't like part ways with it any longer in my heart, right? And then I started kind of like meeting guys and talking, going on little dates here and there. And I'm like, man, this is not it.
What was your worst date?
Really? You want to know?
Yeah, I want to know.
You know, but I
know, that's why
we'll talk about it, okay? So I went on a date, and at the time, oh my gosh, it was a long time ago, he picked me up and took me to dinner. And we went to eat like fondue, but not big. Like fondue was like a big thing. And it wasn't like
everyone was doing it.
Like just like cheese fondue. It was like you cook your meat and it's just like a little pot in front of you. Here in Chicago, I don't remember the restaurant, but the guy,
not memorable, you'd say.
I mean, it was traumatizing because he just kept trying to feed me food. From across the table, and I'm like, I've never done this before. And I said, oh, no, I don't do that. I don't do that.
What kind of a girl do you think I am?
It was weird. Isn't that, look, I'm sorry. If you feed your partner, that's cool. That's great for you.
If that works for you.
But for me, I am just like, I'm just not into it. And right then and there, I just knew I am never going on a date with this person ever again. It was just, I don't know. It was not the best experience. So anyway, I just, Chris, to be like the long and short of it, I just knew that like if I would have hooked up or just partnered with some of these prospects, I knew where I wanted to go and I would be the one in the driver's seat trying to take us there. And I didn't want that. I wanted to sit as a passenger, being the backseat driver, the passenger driver, as you know me to be when we're in the car. It's like, that's also a thing.
We're learning.
We're learning.
I don't know if
And
anyone
I'm
else
learning
has
to just
this
shut my mouth and just let the GPS speak.
Yeah.
Or just trust you that you know where you're going.
Trust.
But just sometimes
it's a bigger theme in life. I know where I'm going.
I know, but spiritually speaking.
If you can't trust me on the freeway, and then also we've come to like a conclusion that you're not allowed to, not you're not allowed, but it would be nice if you didn't fall asleep the minute we start the road trip, because then it's just me.
Well, I don't do that anymore.
No, you don't.
Because I learned.
We've grown
very quickly.
We're in it.
We're in it together, and rightly so. So anyway, I think to just kind of, end this little segment of what I'm, driving this point home, right? I just didn't want that responsibility. And I wanted a man of God that wanted what I wanted, but was big enough to lead me in my calling and lead us into a big life. And I got it.
You got it. You wanted it. But like, was it easy to do that? Because I think we do live in a culture, right? I think even outside of Christian culture, there's this theme of women that want a leader, but same time don't want to be squashed. And you've got these, this reality of maybe desiring a leader, but not knowing how to come under a leader. What even is a leader? How does that work? What was that journey? Was that easy for you?
Yeah. Well, I think to understand that, we've got to almost like go back because, 20-year-old Chris to, Chris in his 40s now, like that's been a journey. And I think rightly so for me too, right? And so I think we were young and we led our lives with our heart and we had big dreams and we were just figuring those things out. And throughout that whole journey, I had to learn to trust you. And there were moments where I was like, yes, I trust you. Let's do it. But the results or the thing that we were aiming for didn't necessarily pan out the way that we had envisioned. Yeah. And so I started to lose a little bit of like, not trust, but I started to lose that partnership.
Kind of trust.
Losing trust.
Not like I broke trust or anything, but like I think our story was one that we thought things were going to be different at the beginning. Like I thought we were going to be like just building the kingdom, doing all this stuff. And you're like, hey, this first year is going to be pretty romantic. And and then there's
we need to talk about
things.
that, because I think we came into this, obviously called into ministry. We said yes, and we were all in. But my idea of that first year of marriage was very different to yours. Different. You're like, you were in your mind, you're like, yes, I have my running partner. We're going to go. We're going to like kill this thing.
Romantic.
And I was like, let's just kind of like, let's have little romantic getaways, and let's enjoy each other. And
there was always youth kids in the back of the car. It was always just
there was always somebody with us.
Let's go. Come on this date with us.
I just had that expectation, and I think because I came in with that expectation, I think I fractured us a little bit, and I fractured you in it.
How so? How do you think?
I think that I was just difficult. I was just being really,
you were,
I was so difficult.
But what I will say to that, to guys is like, when you even just said it this way, like I was learning to trust you, I had to learn to trust you. I think that's pretty natural. And I think that you see a lot of guys maybe give up the reins and get offended that there isn't that trust. And I think you also got to earn it. Like if you're a leader, you just understand any moment you step into a moment of leadership. You know, your leadership's not just given to you. Titles can be given to you. Moments can be given to you. But what you do with it is ultimately what determines whether people are going to follow you. And I think it's the same with a wife. Now, obviously you all got to be self-aware, and you were like self-aware enough to know that it was becoming difficult. But I just felt like fair enough. Like I have to learn, and there was a huge learning curve. I had to learn how to talk to you, figure out where you're at, bring you on the journey rather than drag you along the journey. You know?
And I think I was going through so many different like there's so much change for me in that first year of marriage. Huge. I went from student to student, wife, pastor within the span of like 6 weeks. We got married in Chicago, went away on our honeymoon, came back and literally hit the ground running. Like literally the next day, just hit the ground running. And I think, I guess I wanted to be your focus. I wanted more of you, like eyes on me. I wanted you to see me because I was going through so many changes. I was missing my family. I was in a new place. I mean, when I went from Chicago to Sydney, it wasn't so much of a culture shock because Sydney is it's urban. It's city. I mean, if anything, I feel like it's streets ahead when it comes to fashion and just innovation and creativity. It's amazing. So I didn't feel like that culture shock. But when I moved to the Gold Coast of Queensland, I mean, that's a regional town. And still developing. It was a beach town. You know, people would show up to the grocery store without any shoes and in their cozies, their swim, you know, it's the Aussie thing, and it's cool. But I felt so disconnected, geographically, emotionally, spiritually, and then like romantically as well, because you were so like fixated on just go, run, build, which to your credit, you built this youth ministry and it just exploded, you know, and that didn't come by being passive and just watching it all happen. Like you had to build that and you did that. But I think there were just dark moments for me because I felt alone in that time, in that year. And rather than talk and communicate, because, you know, I'm 21, or sorry, at this point we were 24. I'm 24 when we got married. I was just trying to figure out how I was going to bring these things to you and communicate my emotions and my feelings without you feeling like I'm about to derail our life.
I did feel that. I was like, for a second, I was like, I thought we knew what we signed up for. And my biggest fear was I've done bad relationships. And then I'm thinking, be super careful with the one you marry. Like, I think multiple times I was like, this is what I'm going to do. Yeah. Like, if God calls me to go anywhere, I will go. Will you go? If you can't go, let's just end this now. Like, I was so focused, and it's like,
you were so focused and so
not romantic.
Matter of fact, so like stern and firm.
I still cringe. Like I for a long time, I lived with a lot of regret from that season. And it speaks to the opposites thing. Like we were so different. I just wasn't like, I'm compassionate, but I'm not like emotionally maybe completely aware all the time like that.
Yeah.
And I just didn't see. And then you can get in this stupid funk as a couple where you become adversaries.
Yes.
Where you just start fighting and it's like, well, she's being difficult. And then you don't know how to talk to me. And I'm like, here's the other thing that I think heaps of couples should talk about more is like, one of you tends to be a quick processor and the other one needs time.
Okay.
And the quick processor will drown the one that needs time with just a bombardment of statements and facts and questions.
And you would approach me and be like, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? What do you think? I'm like, I don't know what I'm thinking. But then you quickly learned, oh, let me ask her, what are you feeling?
I didn't feel I quickly learned that.
Well,
I think that took
I feel
years.
like, it took years. Yeah, it did.
I figured it out. Like,
you did.
I'm a
And
slow learner.
Once you asked, hey, what are you feeling? I think I was able to then express where I was emotionally. So I'm not like a logical processor. I'm an emotional processor. I'm going to go through every emotion you can think of, and then I'm going to land at one that's going to ground me. And then I'm like, okay, I'm pissed. I'm frustrated.
Yeah, pissed. Happens a bit.
I'm pissed.
It was a bit of a shock. Actually, one night we're first like married.
Oh, here we go.
And I guess, the funny thing is about being married, you think you're cool, get married, and then realize that there's someone watching you 24/7 and all of a sudden that shifts, right? So there's things you don't even know you do. So apparently when I sleep, I take the covers, and I used to have this thing where I just shoved the covers under like my stomach and would sleep with the covers. Now,
like a bear hug.
Like a bear hug. I don't know why I did it. Didn't know I did it. Probably did it my whole life. And all of a sudden I wake up one night to someone
I'm
just
like trying to grab.
You were doing, I don't know what, I woke up to this.
Well, yeah.
On my back.
The initial attempt was to try to pull it from under you, but you were not letting go. And so I was like, okay, let's just.
But I was sleeping. There was no intent. I was not aware of what I was doing. It wasn't like, I was like, can't hear you. Can't hear you. Like, that's not how it went. So crazy. That was wild. But yeah, I was shocked. For the first 2 years, I gave you a nickname. You didn't like it.
What was my nickname? Christopher?
I called you Boffy.
Boffy.
Ball of Fury. I just would say it, and it didn't make arguments any better.
Oh, man.
It didn't make anything any better.
I think I just internalized everything, and then I was just like, okay, here it is, and it would just be like,
I was so shocked because here's the other, can I just say this, maybe even date the way you're going to like be married.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, I thought we were killing it. I thought we had all these conversations. I'm kind of confrontational.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking I'd walk away from everything and you were internalizing. And I was like thinking, we nailed that.
Yeah.
Good leadership, Chris. Well done. Because you're in Bible college and everything's leadership.
Right.
And everyone's take the lead. There's just all these stupid things. So I'm thinking I'm killing it. And you are like just storing it. And then all of a sudden we get married and I've got this girl that I thought we were like on the same page. And really I was being an idiot and there was other things I didn't know and all this stuff because we're so opposite.
Yeah.
And then it just erupted. And I think you and I have pastored multiple people over the years where really it's just they don't know how to speak to each other.
Right.
Or there's just this kind of holding back or like omission. So then people just get, I think it just gets funky.
But how human is that, right? When you're presented with a dream and the idea of a relationship and you're all in and you're in this stage where it's like, come hell or high water, like you are in. But then everything you say yes to, you have to walk it out. You have to be confronted with the reality of your yes and the reality of a life together and a reality of purpose and just the day-to-day stuff.
Marriages are built, relationships are built. I think that's part of the problem. Marriage is innately the goal. God's made it the goal. I think it's in us unless you've got this gift of celibacy the Bible talks about.
Right.
Like it's the goal. And I think there's a lot of people that want the benefit and the journey of marriage without the commitment. So you watch people always act married. Like they start doing a whole bunch of stuff that makes them feel committed to each other because that feels good, I think.
Yes.
But I think out of process, you're just buying a product that you haven't fully tested. And I think it becomes problematic. And what about this? We lived in a time like we're only 40s. I feel young. Do you feel young?
I do feel young.
I still play sport, still play soccer, still, I feel I do well. Don't want to brag here. Still play golf and drive over 300. Don't want to brag. Yeah.
It's like name dropping.
I love that you
babe.
said, wow. You don't even know what that means much, do you? I love that. Thank you for your support. But you had to walk across a room.
Right.
You had to actually risk rejection as a guy. Like you had to walk over and you had to fumble some words out. Like, we've just got ridiculous stories of our first dating. Like, I was just not smooth. I was so nervous around you. Didn't know how this Christian thing worked in dating. I was just all over the place. So, but we live in a world now where everything is digital. And I think digital it gives the benefit of distance, and distance gives the benefit of somewhat of a removal and anonymity. And therefore, do you think the body counts are higher these days because people are accessible?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, and no one needs to know about it. You don't need to leave the club with someone. You could just swipe and just show up.
Well, why is it like that?
Because it's good engineering. I think we're afraid. We're afraid to be rejected. We're afraid. And how good is it? It's convenient. Like, technology brings things to your fingertips. The problem is, I think the saving grace in a lot of circumstances, why boundaries are important, is the distance between you and your worst decision is often accessible. Accessibility, better said. Right. If it's not accessible, you don't have it. That's why don't hire the hot secretary, marry her. You know what I'm saying? Secretaries, even people have secretaries. That feels so 90s.
I think that's so nice. I don't know that people.
People
EAs,
don't hire. Yeah, but like it's that. Like I was in a message once and someone said, your mind and your mind, your body doesn't. Basically, your mind and your emotions will walk your body into dangerous places. So guard your mind, guard your emotions. And I think we include people in our world, right? Yeah. And that makes it accessible. And I think today, everything's accessible.
Yeah.
Private, without judgment, without risking it.
Yeah. You're
not risking much. You just keep swiping and no one has to know.
Do you think people go all in, on a first, second, third date
100.
Because like...
What do you mean they go all in on a second or third date?
They go straight to the bed.
Yeah, heaps.
I know but I'm asking more so from like trying to understand the psyche and the logic behind that decision. Is it people do it because it's in the moment thing, or is it, let me see if there's sexual chemistry here? If this is a prospect, if this is someone that could potentially be a partner, this is important. We have to have sexual chemistry.
I think that all of that is, you could talk on it. And I think there's heaps of people that would be some of the motivator. I also think that standards move with culture. And when culture makes things that's cool, that's okay. And you just look at Rome and what Rome's journey was and the deprivation of the home and sexual appetites, and how influence and affluence eventually wasn't enough. And the things that trend with culture is quite often that those that have access to the most actually end up kind of changing the landscape of what is permissible. And I think that we also as humans innately look for justification. Adam's like, well, it's the wife you gave me.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Let me justify this mistake. And so humans are justification prone. We are, standards move with culture. And I think culture has made it like accessible. And I think culture makes normalized. And I think culture does that because as humans, we try to bring an explanation to a God-shaped problem without God. And so I'll never forget, like I was again, I kind of was getting these ideals and I'm leaning into church, and young adults ministry really shifted me because it was contextualizing like Jesus in my season. Right. Like, and so they're talking sex, drinking, drugs, all the stuff. And I'm like, and not from like a weird Christian youth pastor guy with a bandana trying to be cool, it's like people like me. And so I just had this conviction. I was like working this job, and I think I was dating someone, and this girl, she was like our trainer, and she's like, have you slept with her? I was like, nah, I'm actually been going to church and I'm kind of thinking about this like saving for marriage thing. And I believe that. She goes, really? And she's like kind of shunned it. And then she goes, I sleep with whoever I want, whenever I want. And then I said, don't you feel empty? And she wasn't expecting that. And I'll never forget, like, everything's cool. Everyone's like, yeah, I'll do whatever I want. Like, you know, I'm just, you know, everyone's like, and then you ask a pointed question and she just stopped and she goes, I used to cry, but eventually you just get numb.
Oh.
And like, these are the honest conversations I'd always have in clubs.
Yeah.
Like, I'd always have it when we're drinking enough. I'd always have it when it was just me and a friend. Like, this real stuff is always there, you know? But like, I think that culture, in an effort to survive without God, what's the best way to remove sin is pretend it doesn't exist. Yeah. If sin is falling short of a mark and you were created for something, to fall short leaves you empty. You're shortchanging you. It's not just this, you know, punitive judgment at a distance from a God that doesn't care. It's like, genuinely, you were made for this. You were shaped to function a certain way. And when you bend over backwards, guess what? It doesn't feel good because you weren't made to function that way. And I think that in an effort to kind of go, well, I don't like this pain, the best way to remove pain is not to assume that what you're doing is not to change what you're doing, but just say that it's no longer wrong.
Right.
And I think culture's moved things, shifted things, and now everyone's going, well, it's normal, it's normal, it's normal. And it's being like fed to people under the guise of security, under the guise of like, do you, and relativity. Is it okay to you though?
Yeah.
And I think we do that because we've lost hope. And I think we don't think we can change. And I don't think we can find good. And so lower the standard and you level the playing field and you make it bigger, and now there's hope again.
Yeah.
That's why I think some people don't believe in marriage.
Yeah.
If I don't believe in marriage, then I don't have to find a good one. So if you lower it, the problem's gone. And I think there's a lot of that.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know where we're at with time.
45 minutes.
Should we do a little closing kind of thing, or?
Yeah. Well, we're 45 minutes in. I don't know what we're going to mince.
We literally spoke for
ages.
45 minutes. But I got to say, this is very natural because you and I talk a lot. Like we
do talk a lot.
We do a lot of like car time, you know, like driving
That's what
the
happens
kids.
when you got kids.
And you get kids.
You live in the car.
We talk a lot, and there's a lot of conversation around anything under the sun. So, well, this was fun.
This one was a little bit like wherever and ever.
Yep.
But we do want to talk about subjects. So in the next one, I don't know what we'll address and we'll attack, but our goal here is just to see where this lands. Talk relationships. Usually when you preach, you've got like 25 minutes, 35 minutes, and you got a format and a flow.
Yeah.
And I don't think, this is me being like transparent and honest right now. Like, I don't know if we're the podcast kind of people. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what I do know is I don't want to play to a game. I just want to be us. And if what is in our life has any kind of help, then that's cool.
Yeah.
Because this is the kind of stuff we can't talk about on a platform. It's just kind of not the thing that generally we shape our messages around. We've got other things.
Yes.
So we're probably going to open up opportunities for you to ask questions, send things in. Yep. We'll hit you up about what that looks like. But we want to talk about it. And if you want to know about it, we'll talk about it from our perspective and our experience. Definitely not perfect, not together, but honest. And from the life that we live with 4 kids, 12 years into building a church, 22 years of being together, 18 years of being married, and definitely more in love with you today than I ever have been. So
it's good. Well, thank you for joining us. I hope we'll see you in the next one.
Till next one.